everybody, and welcome to Readings, April 2020. Once again, due to the lockdown, we're beaming readings at you from each author's study, living room, bedroom, or apiary in one case. That's where bees are kept. Not apes, no, bees. Watch till the end to see if you can guess which one it is. You might spot a bee or two flying around. I tried having everyone move into our house to record this, but the guys at the roadblocks, they just didn't like it. I don't think they got the idea, really. So here we are. Our authors this month are Mamlu Chatterjee, Eileen Lee, P.O. Gnanaselvam, and Ivy NGEOW. So, imagine I had a lot of fun with the pronunciation of all of those, can't you? Sure you can. Our first author, Mamlu Chatterjee, is an editor with a regional stroke global organisation. She writes short stories mostly based on real people and incidents. She's also an avid reader and shortcut cook, and is currently learning about cats since she's been adopted by a couple of them and has rescued a kitten. She lives in a wooden cottage on a hill and loves it.
Hi, I'm Mamlu Chatterjee. We moved here from India to Cameron Highlands in 2017, and I'm very happy to be here today, and I'd like to thank Sharon for giving me the opportunity to share an excerpt from my story, Begonia. I hope you enjoy it. The move from the city was uneventful. Everything happened smoothly. We sang aloud with the radio on the drive up, and none of the luggage got lost. The house was painted bright yellow with white framed windows and doors, and it looked like a Lego house. Shaped like an L, it had a cozy feel to it, and I couldn't wait till it was cold enough to light the fire, using the logs kept at the ready in the big baskets next to the fireplace. Tall hollyhocks lined the driveway, and there was a white picket fence along the lawn from where the hills could be seen, some hazily in the distance and some closer. A long kitchen made up one end of the house, and the other rooms made up the other broader arm of the L. An old blue fridge and a checkered floor made the kitchen quirky, just the way I liked it. Beat my city kitchen with its tiny space any day. The wooden floors reverberated at our steps, and we realized how hard and noisily we walked. The windows rattled as well, like an evil spirit huffing and puffing to blow the house down. In truth, their panes were desperately in need of a fix, but did we mind? No. We were just happy to get away from the frenetic pace of the city and breathe in the cool air up in the hills. Mihir was happy, and in a flurry of energy, we unpacked our 7 bits and bobs that very night, put fresh sheets on the beds, made some Maggi noodles for dinner, and sat under the little light in the kitchen, smiling foolishly over our first dinner in the new home. Tomorrow, Mihir would go to his new office, and I would pick fresh flowers and set about turning this yellow cottage into our home. I saw a hooded person with the scythe. I saw him, or was it her, I couldn't tell, hanging about behind the door to our bedroom. It was early, and I saw it clearly looking in my direction. I realized it was futile to even try and tell Mihir about it, because he would disagree, be terrified, and then walk up to the door tentatively, show me his dark blue track pants hanging on a hook there, and explain, "See, it's my track pants you saw. Nothing scary." I would nod quietly, knowing very well that's not what it was. The next time it happened again while I was washing my face. Cleaning my face with hot water, I felt someone move the strand that had fallen on my forehead. My eyes were tightly shut against the hot water, and as I turned the tap off to open the cold, my eyes flew open, and I saw a face staring back at me in the mirror, and it was not my face. It was thin, with missing teeth, sunken cheeks, and coal-lined eyes. Malevolent, evil eyes. With a single splash of cold water, it was gone, like I'd imagined it all. I splashed some more cold water onto my face, and with great relief saw myself back again, that strand of hair stubbornly back on the forehead. This time I didn't dare touch it. I crawled into bed and fell into a deep, crowded dream. Whooshing sounds, sighs, knocks on doors, hard digging sounds, all abounded. We made excuses for each one. It's a wooden house, an old one at that, I explained to myself over and over again. As I saw it, if houses live and have feelings, then this one was a tempestuous, spoiled little girl, all flouncy dresses and bouncy curls. She wanted a lot of attention. She was prone to pouting and fits of indignation at every slight and blamed her mother for everything troublesome in her young life. So who was the older, malevolent face in the mirror? Days went by in a golden haze. We woke up to bird song and slept with the moon rising from behind the dark hills in the distance. We ignored the odd thumps and knocks now and then and installed wind chimes at the entrances to ward off any lurking evil spirits, opened all the windows to let the sun stream in, filled available vases with bunches of wildflowers, and talked about getting a pup. All good. Or not. We had to go away for Mihir's official orientation to the city, and were away for 3 days. And right through, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that the house was keening and calling out to me. It was upset at being locked up. It had got used to being taken care of, with music playing all day while I worked, and was now pouting furiously at being left behind, slamming doors and gnashing its teeth like an angst-filled preteen. I felt it strongly the moment we walked back into the house. A heavy, smoky, ill-tempered feeling, curling in spumes at the corners and sending out indigo slivers of noxious fumes. Opening all the windows helped somewhat, but a reproachful air hung heavy everywhere. I had to find out the history of this house, everything else that I could. Pushpamma was a third-generation worker in these parts, and originally from South India, had been born and bred in the town down the hill. She was in her late 50s, an energetic chatterbox, given to doing everything at the speed of light. She knew everyone in the area. A devout Hindu, she went to the temple every Sunday with flowers in her hair and an ash-colored spot on her forehead. I would ask her, I decided. I did. And she dropped the pan she was scrubbing in the sink and looked as pale as she possibly could, slapping her hand over her mouth with an expression much like those cartoon characters. I asked her again, more gently this time. She turned off the tap, shook her hands and dried them on the dishcloth before she could look at me. There was a child, she said, a girl. Her mother was too busy with other activities and left the child alone with servants at home very often. Her father was busy at work and saw her just for an hour or so every evening before she went to bed. But in that hour, he made her feel like a princess and showered her with gifts and gave her the love that kept that child going. Her mother was jealous, brought home a lover one day. When the child saw her mother with the lover, she threatened to tell her father. And in a fit of rage, the woman pushed the child out of her way, sending her rolling down the steps leading up to the veranda, killing her. This is all I know, ma'am. Maybe his only story, I don't know, Pushpamma said. I sipped my tea while I thought about this tale. Something was missing, and I couldn't figure out what. I took my cup of tea and went to the veranda and looked at the steps leading up to it. I had hanging pots trailing petunias all along in the veranda, and rather liked the way it looked. The wind was whistling today. Even though it was a bright day, it was cold. I took a step and lurched forward, teacup flying, and hurtled down the steps. Somewhere a door banged shut. When I came to, 3 worried faces were looking at me. Mihir, the girl with her mouth open, and a bespectacled doctor with slicked back hair. He still had a torch in his hand, and I expected him to say in a minute. I sat up, waved them all away, and hid in the bathroom to gather my thoughts. For the life of me, I couldn't remember how I'd fallen. The ground was smooth. There was no rug or mat to trip me up. My head wasn't swinging, so what happened? And why on earth did the doctor bring his daughter with him? I sat bolt upright suddenly. The girl was sitting on the edge of the bathtub looking at me. My questions yielded no reply from her, and I wanted to shake her. I flung the door open and bellowed, "Out!" And she walked out of the door very slowly, looking at me over her shoulder. Mihir came running, not used to hearing my stage voice for several years. Looking perplexed. "What happened? Why are you yelling?" he said, and continued to stare at me, bewildered. I asked him, "Doctors aren't supposed to bring their children on visits, are they? Or is that the norm here?" Next thing I knew, it was morning. Mihir was waking me up with my cup of tea and rolling up the blinds to let the day come in. He was already dressed for his day in the field, in his shorts and polo tee, waving goodbye, telling me to have my warm water first. "The doc will be in to check on you," he said. "Stay in bed if you want. I'll get those banisters fixed, and I'll see you at lunch." And he was off without answering my question about the doctor's daughter. The banisters got fixed, and every now and then the Middle Eastern tourists would wander in on their rambles and stand at those very banisters, posing for pictures at the yellow house in the hill. No doubt, a memorable part of their holidays in these parts. A nightjar evolved from the forest behind, probably lured by the sound of the chimes that sounded like a brown bird in the trees. His solemn hoots at night were comforting, like a gruff uncle who looked out for us. We went about our quiet days undisturbed, driving up to the little town nearby when we needed anything, and early nights became the rule. I was almost convinced that I had let my imagination run away with me and fancied things where there weren't any, when suddenly, out of nowhere, I had to think again. We had gone to a young couple's home for dinner, and they had some elderly relatives visiting. Our host introduced us to them, adding that we had recently moved into the yellow cottage up the hill. The look on the old lady's face was a dead giveaway, and I caught her husband's look as well, while he tried to shush his wife, who was in no mood to be shushed. Didn't they break down that house? How can they be living in that house after everything that happened? She quavered on, much to our host's embarrassment. Mihir was alarmed, I could tell. "What happened there? What's the story?" he asked. And over dinner, we heard the whole story.
Thank you to Mamlu for that. Now, Eileen Lee was born in London, UK, but has roots in Malaysia. After graduating from Royal Holloway College, she had several years as a lecturer and a copywriter until she took the leap into writing. As a result, her fiction has since appeared in various magazines and anthologies in the UK, Australia, Singapore and Malaysia, such as Asian Monsters from Fox Spirit Books. Her debut novel is Liquid Crystal Nightingale.
Hello, my name is Lee Eileen, and I will be reading out from my debut novel, Liquid Crystal Nightingale, which was published in the UK last month, March 19th, 2020. Here's the cover. As you can see, it's it's a big science fiction set in space. So I will be reading out the first chapter. So let's begin. Chapter 1. Tyro Pleo Tanza made a vow as she rode the T-car network to the ends of Châteaubriant, her home city settlement. Leave. Although not right at this moment, she sat in the last carriage of the T-car as it sliced through the air. And if she jumped out now, she would end up on, and like the streets below, a total mess. Or T-cars ran along miles of tracks suspended above the streets, and she could see the moss-green band of a minor canal flowing beneath the window on her right. People assembled on the station platforms built above the tracks. The passing T-car illuminated their faces, and Pleo glimpsed them staring into the middle distance like the passengers in the carriage with her. The 6 passengers teetered on the edge of narrow seats or leaned against beige walls, scurred so often they acquired a uniform sandblasted finish. Next page. Châteaubriant ensconced themselves in cocoons of inattention on T-cars. After the death of Sarusa, Pleo's twin sister, Pleo duly swapped her cocoon for armor. Unlike these people, her life would not degrade into routine. Thanks to her vows, she rode with purpose today. Her vows provided her with much-needed spiritual ballast, no different from the prayers wrapped together with amulets and mementos sold to the tourists and devotees at the temple of Gachala, the emerald sun at the center of the Archer's ring system. The commuters around Pleo covered their eyes at the same moment as if taking part in a choreographed dance. It meant the tea-car was nearing the temple. The looming prism of vivid teal speckled with gold-mirrored fragments was an architectural marvel, but the sunlight reflecting off the roof made the view dangerous despite the thick film coating the tea-car's windows. Pleo averted her gaze as the diffused light bleached the carriage interior for a few seconds. Right now, there would be a few nuns at the entrance of the temple to greet devotees and tourists, exhorting them to pray to Gachala, the emerald sun and shield, for better tomorrows. An emerald sun made as much sense to Pleo as the temple's architectural opulence. Gachala was a simmering green at sunset for only a minute, when its light was scattered through a clean atmosphere due to a lull in activity between shine shifts. Still, Pleo had visited the temple once a week and only stopped going when Sarusa died. Over the past year, she attempted to keep a journal in her sister's honor, since Sarusa had always confided in her diary. The expected outpouring of words failed to manifest after Sarusa's funeral, but during the early rush hour commutes, Pleo found herself scrawling the same words over and over again onto her standard moth-wing paper pad. She wrote, "Chatoyans means cat's eye in Old Tehran French. People who live here are called Chatoyans, and those who don't live here assume the city blinks when seen from space, but they are wrong. There is no giant eye that lights up and or opens and closes. We have city zones, which light up instead, one after the other, in bands of light that travel towards each other, towards the center of Chatoyans, and they meet at the pupil. When a band lights up, the other zones remain unlit. Chatoyans who work when their zone lights up call this 8-hour period a shine shift. Those living in the unlit zones are supposed to rest and sleep. I can't sleep since Sarusa died." Other passengers never cared for Pleo's notes. Their sporadic attention was always turned to the highlights. These were news, updated in real time and printed on moth paper strips generated by a pair of specialized carriage columns. One detailed T-car running times and station statuses. The other column was for news. The highlights fluttered like prayer flags every time the T-car hit the tracks. Each passenger tore off a strip and discarded it after reading, where it fragmented into transparent specks before settling on the carriage floor. Sometimes a highlight did not break up and remained on the floor, twitching until the energy contained in its splicing of butterfly neurons, cellulose, and gossamer ran its course. Pleo was old enough to remember panel screens in stations and T-cars before the highlight columns replaced them. Chatoyant's Metro had decided that it was much harder to vandalize columns wrapped in reinforced glass than screens. A pair of municipal drones clicked and whirred as they scrubbed down the walls at every stop. When the T-car was moving, they rested on the ceiling like fluorescent yellow beetles. Pleo ignored them and watched two constabulary officers, both female, and decked out in their indigo uniforms, boarding the neighboring carriage. They performed a cursory sweep before moving on to the next carriage. On this morning, Pleo added a new sentence to her story. The sentence was, "Today I took Sarusa's body to Leroy Minor Canal." She finished and tore out the page. The minute golden scales covering the paper's surface ensured it remained stuck onto the bottom of the window next to her seat. That she had changed nothing in her story just meant that her life was still the same a year later. She was still a Tyro-level gemology student at Châteaubriand's Polytechnical. When she got off at the circular hub of Polytechnical Station, she regretted the amendment to her story. She was leaving behind an extra part of herself, in her eagerness to disclose a thought which up to that point had been too personal to express in public. So thank you for listening. If you want to know more and continue the story, here is the book again, Liquid Crystal Nightingale. So thank you all and stay safe. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Eileen. Now, Pei-O, otherwise known as Pei-O, is a Malaysian poet living in England. She seems to imagine she's going to get away with my saying the least possible about her. Well, I know several people she knows in England, and I can tell you, maybe we'll keep it for another time. To make up for that, I was hoping to have some footage of a rare signed copy of her pamphlet Pictograph, which is published by Flairstack Poets, also in England. I just can't find it. I can't find the pamphlet anywhere. I've been looking on the bookshelves behind me. But I can tell you it's pretty good, so watch out. Here we go.
Hello from sunny England, where we are in lockdown, and sending solidarity from here to where you are now. I'd like to thank Sharon and Param for having me in this special edition of readings in Kuala Lumpur this April. Stay safe. Best wishes from me. I'm going to read from my pamphlet, and my first poem is a story about one of my grandmothers, and she was attending the funeral of her first husband in Canton, China. More than a quarter of the male population in China was said to have been addicted to opium by 1905. So this is a poem about her. Ghost Money. On the coarse joss paper, each gilt stamp shines in the thick air. 3 nights vigil by your body. Oil lamps burn under the grimace and posture of thunder guardians. They threaten the demons who skitter from the underworld. I am here in the shadows, waiting by the open door. My fingers splay round the weave of ghost money, deftly fold the paper, a shape of ingots to consign to the fire. Husband, what will you do with it, wandering spirit? Does it flutter down into some other hall of your ancestors, where your death tablet sits stiffly with those of the elders? Rows of carved names like small wooden anchors, the tug of obligation to your clan, reaching you through the falling ash of Joss. Hungry ghosts, poor and lonely, press their faces against the window, no one to burn spirit goods for them, to ease their way in the underworld. Nothing I set light to could reach you in this world. You were a hungry ghost of skin and bones, sucking on the stem of your opium pipe. Husband, you go ahead with eyes turned inwards. Can you find our son? A brief pale moth flitting away before you, a small, unseizable shape. No songs to rock him away. I was a rictus under the sackcloth hood. His procession wended slowly among the stands of pine to White Cloud Hill. Tomorrow We will go there again for you, husband, the same weary steps. Your family glaring at me, dry-eyed, bad luck wife, with nothing but ghost money in her empty hands. And the next poem is another poem about a wife, but this wife is an inventor of across-the-bridge noodles in Kunming, and she never had any credit for her famous dish. Nobody even knows her name. Nameless wife. It was spring, of course. Our eyes clashed like cymbals at the lift of my red veil. I barely heard the boy children shout, brought to jump on our bed, so we have sons. An instant recognition. You had never seen me before, nor I, you. I was bold to look right back. I won't stop doing that. But now you've shut yourself away on the island to pace and recite the 4 books and 5 classics. Your duty to me, you say, your duty to your family. Sometimes our hands clasp the same brush as we glide it over the parchment, the character for double happiness, longevity. I've discovered an alchemy to the meals I bring, a quail's egg and tender chicken, delicate greens, spicy pickles, hot broth sealed with oil. I've transformed from bare bones. It has to keep across the long walk to the lake pavilion to nourish you. You won't deny I know the science of salt and heat, the heartbeat of footsteps on the wooden bridge. A flurry of wind blows our robes together, flutters the pages of your books. And the next one I'm going to read is about another grandma I have. I have lots of grandmas, and this one is my number 4 grandma. My number 4 grandma channels Hanuman, the monkey god. Number 4 grandma wears samfu, her Chinese New Year trouser suit. It is loose and dignified. Her hair straggles out of her gray bun. Her strange glance gives me goosebumps. She bends with eerie grace, twirls an imaginary staff. Monkey-gated, she lollops to the red altar piled with plates, fruit and food for invisible guests. Her bare hands break the green apple. These pieces of luck she tosses salty sweet into our mouths. Number 4 grandma inspects us with monkey god eyes, ancient blessings from a far country. Benevolent joker, she laughs and does a monkey dance step, touching noses with all the grandchildren who have wide eyes. So my next poem is called Aunt Boudica, which is about someone else's aunt who I met at university in Virginia. This is in the shape of a sonnet. My pert, blonde upstairs neighbor, Angela, asked on that summer's day if she could bring her mother's sister, her Aunt Boudica, who just at that hour was visiting from Berkeley, to our shared barbecue. Aunt B pounced immediately, skewered me for daring to serve some chicken to you. the man who received a teriyaki drumstick from my small, honey golden hands. I had brought feminism to its knees. I was a disgrace to Gloria Steinem as your fantasy of servile Chinese. Silenced, I made her tea for her liver. Respecting her age, I served that to her. And to finish, I will end with another opium poem, and this time about my great-grandfather, who was also an opium smoker. He was a doctor in Canton. Opium smoker remembers his daughters. The maids no longer light the lanterns when the moon is full. Your mouths are voracious, loudly speaking, always eating. The rice bins are empty. The rats shiver through the banded shadows, leaving. Everywhere I inhale, the smoke blossoms, dark and rich, my own banquet of memory. Ah, let me remember the painted umbrellas twirling as we watched the fireworks in fragile boats by the lake. Old ties drift apart, the courtyard emptying of last rays. Willow leaves litter the barren ground. You fan yourselves, demanding passage over the seas, anywhere but here. I had given you away, my crippled daughters, chubby lips sulky with discontent. You keep returning to the house, bringing misfortune, consuming the gold, determined to carry on. Wind weaves through the ragged huts on the rotten wood jetties by the harbor. Bands of dogs roam, giving voice, their jagged airs of yip and whine. Sisters should stick together, so float away now. Marry that tin king on his mountain. The soil may be thin, elevation merely to a hilltop. You need to coax saplings from that poor earth. Pout some more when the ship comes in, its hold empty and gaping wide, fingers stained with tarry residue. Cobbles roll beneath me, sweetly rock and sway. And this poem was first published in Asian Cha. Stay safe, stay well. Lots of love from England. Bye now.
Thank you, Pei. Our next author is Paul Gnanaselvam. Paul is an Ipoh-born writer and poet whose work often focuses on the experiences, issues and identity conflicts of those in the Indian diaspora. His poems and short stories have been published both locally and internationally in e-magazines, anthologies and literary journals. His first solo collection of short stories, Lata's Christmas and Other Stories, was published in 2013. He currently lectures at University Tunku Abdul Rahman in Kampar, Perak, West Malaysia.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Readings. Thank you Sharon Baka for inviting me to read for the April session. And I really hope that everyone is in good spirits despite the prolonged MCO. And I suppose we just have to be patient and come together, stay at home, practice good hygiene standards, and together we stand to curb the spread of the virus. Yeah? Okay, so today I'm going to read an excerpt from my short story Masalode that was published in January 2020 by Fixie. Of course, the anthology is known as 2020, an anthology, and the short story is titled Masalode. Basically, they called for submissions, wanted Malaysians to basically write about what they thought about 2020, and basically how Malaysians have actually come all these years to the much awaited 2020, and whether we have actually achieved Mahathir's Vision 2020 or probably Malaysia's Vision 2020, and what are the pros and what are the cons, and whether we have become the nation that was envisioned by our leaders. All right. So when I was thinking about 2020, and I definitely was thinking about what Malaysians are going to bring into 2020, juxtaposed to the idea of what they should not be bringing into 2020. So what got me into thinking was, in 2020, or at the brink of 2020, Malaysians are still fighting over food. Of course, the prevalence of food culture, all right, I suppose has brought about all this, with the Singaporeans claiming chicken rice as theirs, and definitely the memes that have been coming up, I think in the last 3 years, about food translations and food copyrights among Malaysians. All right, and I think particularly the Indians, there were a lot of memes that were coming up, and we are not really happy with our food being labeled and translated. Like, for example, the Adarasam, of course, it is called Dendaram, and there is also another name, Kueh Cuping Telinga Keling. That's another. All right. So, but then again, I suppose rice is a staple diet for all of us. And rice being the basic ingredients in a lot of things that we cook and make, we can't run away from, from making them, eating them, celebrating them, and definitely borrowing names and probably fine-tuning it to our own way of life and things like that. All right, so this is Masalode. Masalode, I think, simply translates into Masala Vade. And it was quite a popular term that was used for masala wade. I think I used to come across this word in the Pasar Malams when I was in Nilai, Bandar Baru Salak Tinggi, Kuala Selangor, all right, and these areas, okay? And of course, Putu Mayam is Putu Bambu, Aci Muruku is Kueh Rose, and Kway Teow is Kway Teow. And definitely, they all use rice as a basic ingredients, and they have all been given slight fine-tunings to be definitely, I suppose, to be accepted in that particular culture, or to be understood in that particular culture. I mean, what it is supposed to be. And I suppose that food should bring us together as Malaysians rather than dividing us. So this story is just explores the socio-political, socio-economical lines, all right, in the exchange of these food, intercultural exchange of these food. Yeah. All right, I'm going to start reading, and these are the excerpts. Yeah. Okay. On the way to her stall, Kaksu stopped to look up at the signboard on Rajama's stall. She left abruptly when Rani peered over the counter. That evening, a few men arrived to climb up to her signboard with paint and brush. When they descended, a short but very neat lettering appeared, artfully cursive but illegible to Rajama and Rani. Rajama waited for Encik Hassan to explain what it was. He smiled sheepishly. "It's for the roti canai," he said, without thinking, before leaving with a dozen masala vades. The rain had been incessant. It had kept the workers stranded under the covered peripheries of their factories. Few walked out to the stalls. Many made a quick dash for their buses or scuttled away to avoid getting wet. When the rain stopped, the same men returned to Kaksu's stall. for the rainwater had smudged the intricate wording they had crafted earlier on her signboard. This time, they painted something in thicker, bold black lines, adjacent to the masala word. Halal, halal, Rani read out lazily as she went about her chores. Rajama was still able to dish out 500 wades in the evenings. The fried cakes were still popular with the migrant workers, who still did not wait for them to be packed. But the effects came unannounced. First, Inchi Hassan seemed to have lost his firm gait walking up to Rajama's stall. She initially thought he was unwell. Unlike his habit, he ordered one masala vade, complimented, and left, walking over to Kaksu's. The following day, he asked if Rajama sold masalode. Masalode? Rani cupped her mouth in a fit of laughter. Rajama gave no sign of being pleased. Her insolent stare was thicker than the impending haze, which had returned undeterred by the rainy days. Inchi Hassan left 40 cents on the counter and walked away with one vade unpacked. He avoided eye contact with Rajama thereafter, whenever he crossed the street. Our masala vades are vegetarian, Amma. Shall we write that on our signboard? Asked Rani. No slaughtered products, cats and flies included. Rajama remained silent. To each his own. No need to slander, she said after a thought. Get back to your work, Rani. Keep your intentions clean. Right, I'm going to continue. And this is the ending of the story. After Kaksu had left, Rani unplugged the mobile phone from the socket. She produced a stapler and a packet of brown food envelopes from under the counter. Rajama joined her and they began to pack the masala vades as Rani read out the online orders from the screen. Don't forget to include the sambar and chutney. Fill the sambal ikan bilis in smaller packets, Rajama reminded her. Never knew masala vade could go with sweetened sambal. My children eat chapati with tose. My children eat chapati and tose with peanut butter, Amma. Fruit jams too, answered Rani. They detest leftover curries. A few customers came and went when a motorbike with a carrier stopped at the entrance. The women briefed the rider and proceeded to load the orders to be delivered out. I've been thinking, said Rani. What is it? The orders of our masala vades are consistent. We can continue supplying to the school canteen, restaurants and factories nearby. I'm wondering if we could sell nasi lemak, Rani suggested. Nasi lemak won't sell here. But Amma, if you show me how you make that wild boar varuval, I'll prepare the coconut, rice, sambal, cucumber slices and roasted peanuts. We can move without labels since we don't need them. We can use the motorbike for delivery. Why not? Rajama said. We can pack them here. Come home this Sunday. Nasi lemak with wild boar varuval. Now that's exciting, said Rani. Chicken rendang and vegetarian too, if there is a demand. We call it Nasi lemak wawasan. Okay, so that's the end of the story, my reading for Masalode. And I hope that everyone keeps safe and stay home and definitely stay sane. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Paul. Our final writer this month, last but by no means least, is Ivy Nyaw. Ivy was born and raised in Johor Bahru, Malaysia. She's the author of 3 novels, Overboard, published by Leopard Print. Cry of the Flying Rhino, published by Proverse Hong Kong, which was the winner of the 2016 International Proverse Prize. And Heart of Glass, published by Unbound UK, as well as many short stories. She lives in London, and here she is.
Hi everybody, my name is NGEOW and I'm an author of 3 novels and numerous short stories. I was born and raised in Johor Bahru, Malaysia. I just want to thank Sharon for inviting me back to read, and today I'm going to be reading from my new book, Overboard, which has just come out. It's a novel in multiple viewpoint narrative from 4 viewpoints. It's about a white man who has been found alive after an epic storm and a shipwreck in Thailand. And he only knows his name because they tell him his name. And one day, a Chinese woman arrives to take him back to London. And she says that she's his wife. So today I'm going to be reading from the viewpoint of the Chinese woman. In the opera cafe, she received an email from the hospital. How did they get her email address? She put her hands over her mouth. Had her heart stopped? No breath came out. They said they had tried to call but couldn't get through. He'd had an accident, but he was alive in the hospital. She could not believe it. They had found him. She gripped the RSJ legs to steady herself. She would have to fly out as soon as she could to the hospital in southern Thailand. They gave her the coordinates. He couldn't speak. There would be no use in calling him, as his vocal cords had been ripped by the accident, and he was waiting for his op. Of course, she replied straight away. She would be there as soon as she could. She realized her face was wet and she was weeping. She checked the time. It was night time, so it was daytime back in London. Her mother Eva had warned her about the dangers of the gap year. She opened Skype, logged in, and called her mother. As usual, they spoke at cross purposes, like each was having a conversation with herself. Although they were trying to communicate, Phoebe felt like they were each speaking in a different foreign language. It didn't help that her mother's English was not perfect, despite having lived in the UK for more than 40 years. The Skype call quality was clearer than the conversation, which wasn't saying much. Many people had accident on their gap years, young or old. It's gap. That's the shop. No, Mum, listen, you just never hear about it because you don't know them. They are not celebs. Why can't he have a normal job like everybody else? Her mother was being Chinese again, so she held her breath for a second. But this is not a celeb. This is Greg, Mum. Anyway, what is gap? Why people even want to do it? We've been through all this. It's something that both of us want to do. No Asians do such dumb thing. I think it must be Greg want you to go on mad trip. In the old days, you lucky to get job and hang on to it for life. There is no such thing as a job for life in these times, Mum. Now people throw it all away in order to do things like jump off a mountain while tied to elastic band. Trust everything, one's entire existence, past, present, future, on this elastic band. Phoebe didn't mention her sister Bethany. The name just could not be brought up by anyone. Bethany never did anything mad. She was as safety conscious and as low risk as a girl could be. She didn't even ride a bicycle. Her mother and her would be thinking the same thing of Bethany, how life was short, ending too soon, taken away, robbed, and so on. All the hackneyed phrases. The anniversary of her death was always a somber and excruciating day. Bethany was now simply a ghost who would haunt Phoebe's family forever. It was night, and she was being eaten alive by mosquitoes at the internet cafe. Phoebe is still trying to book flights when another email came in. The hospital had written to say that the patient was running a high temperature, had a serious infection, was delirious, and they were doing tests right now, so no visits were possible for a few days until the fever came down. Phoebe considered what her mother had said earlier. Trish came into the cafe. Hey, do you want to grab dinner? That would be great. I was just about to book the flights. So you called your mom? Yes. And you know, same. Her mother could be kind, yet without being understanding at all. Yes, this was possible for an Asian parent. Phoebe was a BBC, British-born Chinese, and she had never been surrounded by Asians until she was here in Asia. Now, Phoebe had become aware that her mother was expert at what was impossible for a white person. They were the other way around. A British person could be understanding but unkind. Phoebe was in purgatory while she awaited further news, and now she was not even able to book her flights. At least he's okay? Trish didn't sound sure. You think so? Phoebe was even less sure than her friend. He's alive, and you'll see him soon. Trish put her arm around Phoebe. Yeah, she wiped at her tears absently, like a child who had been picked up after falling over. Couldn't they give him paracetamol or antibiotics or something to bring it down? I'm sure they're doing all that. What else are they doing? What tests? I don't know anything. I can't even. Trish gave Phoebe a hug and Phoebe returned it. She had been so busy gripping the rusty RSJ legs as though they were smooth and silky pets. She had not realized where her arms were. Phoebe achieved nothing that day other than making a few children happy with what they had designed in their art club. She didn't book her flight. She had just endured a phone call with her mother and had been savaged by mosquitoes because in her stress and anxiety she had forgotten the repellent. I'm here to rescue you. I know, thank you. Phoebe smiled through her tears. What do you feel like eating tonight? Asked Trish. Let's go to that Mlab place by the river. Phoebe loved that name. It meant shade of the nutmeg tree. I really fancy a prahok with chrome. You're doing fine, said Trish. You've been so brave, Phoebes. You've just got to trust that they're doing a good job. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me read from Overboard. If you're curious to find out more, my book is available from here, tinyurl.com/overboardiv. You can also follow me on social media to find out more news and updates. You can get hold of me at writemeow.com, and you can also drop me an email at iv_meow@yahoo.com. I will always reply. You can get hold of me on Facebook, Ivy Meow Writer, on Twitter, or on Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.
Well, there you have it. Another month of readings without the mingling, the wine or the cakes, seeing each other, the mosh pit at the front below the stage diving as well. I'm missing it all already. The dry ice, the bouncers. It's just not the same without all that. But I hope you enjoyed seeing and hearing this month's authors, who were Mamlu Chatterjee, Eileen Lee, Peo, Gnanaselvam and Ivy NGEOW. Thanks to each and every one of them. I hope you enjoyed it. Do stay tuned to this very channel to discover what may transpire next month. Meanwhile, I hope you all stay safe and sound, and bye for now.